This is Synthesis TV, keeping you on the edge of technology and business.
Fake agile is a concept that we use to define companies that are convinced they are doing agile practices, but in fact aren't. I'm Howard Feldman, and this is Synthesis TV. Joining me this afternoon is Tayla Boni. She is a senior solutionist at Synthesis Software Technologies, and I wanted to ask her what it means to be faking it. Taylor, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And you, Howard?
I am well, thank you.
You're not faking it, are you?
I'm definitely not. Definitely not. So we live in this world of agile, right? Everything's got to be agile. But recently, in fact, and I heard the term from you for the very first time, you mentioned this concept of fake agile. And I wanted to understand what it is. Help me out here.
Yeah, so I think it's something that I'm also discovered while working on different projects with different customers. And obviously, being a solutionist, like when I started working with Agile, I wanted to know what it was end to end. So I studied this thing back to back, and I was religious about how we did certain things. But then when I saw it in practice, sometimes following the book was the least agile thing you could do. And then I started seeing how all these other companies started talking about agile, and it's really like this buzzword that we've seen over the last couple of years. And everyone talks about how they want to be agile and they want to be disruptive by introducing this type of agile methodology, but they couldn't be the furthest thing from it. And a lot of the time it's because they're wanting to follow it by the book, or they introduce something like Scrum, for example, but they have a daily stand-up meeting and they think that's what makes them agile. And often what we see with this is these types of companies are often the first to say, well, agile doesn't work. But it doesn't work because you're not doing agile at all. It's fake.
Okay, so let's try and understand. Let's take a step back before anybody who doesn't know. What is agile?
So look, at the end of the day, agile is a project management methodology, right? And it's got varying sort of approaches underneath it. So it's basically agile is this umbrella, and underneath it you've got different practices like Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, and all of these different things are just ways in which you can implement better on your project. But agile in its true form is all about being able to be flexible, respond to change, fail fast. It's not introducing this rigid process that is there and meant to control everything that you're doing, like not allowing any wiggle room. The whole point of it is to allow us to adapt to all the different changes that we experience as part of software development or any business process, really, that will allow us to respond better and ultimately improve the way we do things going forward to deliver a better product.
So having a Scrum Master, is that anti-agile?
So funny, I'm actually so happy you asked this question.
No, because I'm very confused by this whole Scrum Master thing, because to me it just seems like a nursemaid, but maybe I'm not understanding this properly.
So Scrum in itself, so a Scrum Master is there to help facilitate and to be a servant leader for your Agile team, right? Or your Scrum team, if Scrum is the approach that you've used. And they can help the team be more agile. And they're there to help coach that team at the end of the day to a certain degree. But if you look at Scrum on its own, and you look at the latest version of the Scrum playbook, they do not mention the word agile once.
That's interesting.
It is, yeah. And this is actually because, Scrum actually predates Agile by a couple of years.
Wow.
So Scrum actually came first, and it's just happened to fit under and morph under this Agile thing. But you can call yourself a Scrum Master, for example, or any of the roles within Scrum. That doesn't make you Agile. Just that, like I said, by doing a daily stand-up meeting or introducing a certain role, if you're not performing that within an Agile way, so adopting an Agile mindset, you're implementing the things that help you do Agile and implement the how, but the process that sits behind it and the actual mindset that helps those things thrive is missing. And that's ultimately what's going to make it fake at the end of the day, and potentially what's going to make it fail.
So why would anybody bother? Why not just say, agile is not what we're going for? Is it because it's so important in this technology world to claim that you're agile?
So I definitely think that it's become a trend recently, right? And it's this whole savvy thing within the digital environment that we see ourselves in. But I think a lot of people try to hop on this trend because they see that it works for other companies
Right.
or people.
But they're not really getting behind it.
Exactly. But it's not to say
Right.
that agile will work for you. Sometimes maybe it's not what you need. But it's the same way, like if you look at it within the agile umbrella, if you look at Scrum and you try out Scrum and you actually see, Scrum maybe isn't what our team needs. We maybe need, like, we don't need a daily stand up. We maybe just need to regroup once a week just because of the nature of our team. The agile part of that is being open and aware to acknowledging that that is what your team needs and changing the way you are doing your process in order for the team to succeed.
In
So
other
that
words,
is
it's almost like trying to be rigidly flexible.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of approach do you see as a solutionist? What do you see as being the most successful methodology?
So look, I love agile, right? I think that I will always preach agile because I've seen how it can work. But I'm all for looking at what works best for what that company needs and what the team needs. So if we try out agile and we say, like I said earlier, we maybe pick up Scrum, but if we start to notice that these things aren't working, we need to be flexible enough to acknowledge that we need to change. And it's about collaborating with the team and being open and transparent about what's not working so that we can introduce those changes for the good of the project.
Are there teams where it doesn't work?
100%. There might be some process. I've seen a couple instances within supply chain where they do require quite rigid processes, and maybe agile won't necessarily work, and that's perfectly okay. Then you maybe need a bit more of a waterfall approach. But I think I'm quite of the opinion nowadays that gone are the days of waterfall and agile. I feel like we're very much in this hybrid approach nowadays where we're combining different approaches because the environment is actually so turbulent to change right now that one thing maybe isn't going to work, or it'll work for a brief amount of time, but then you're going to have to be flexible enough to change. And that in itself is actually being agile, but you might pick up different
and how difficult is it to get customers on board with this type of approach, because it does maybe give a fluidity that could be quite scary for a customer.
Exactly. I think you have to get buy-in from the customer, right? And sometimes the customer is very open to it because they can see the value in it. It's when they can't see the value that it's challenging. But that's why I think you've got to create an environment where the team are allowed to surface their concerns and potentially trial out things just to experiment. And if it doesn't work, then we adjust. It's because if something's not working for us right now, what's the harm of adjusting? It's already broken. We're not going to break it more by trying something innovative and something new. We want to encourage people to collaborate and share those ideas openly. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. At least now we know that doesn't work. We're not going to waste time anymore.
Well, I was going to ask you advice to customers, but that actually is advice. Give it a try. Go with an approach that might be a little bit different, as long as you're confident about the people that you've engaged with. And then maybe it isn't for you, but take a chance a little bit. Fail quickly because that's agile too, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if I were to give advice to customers, though, I would say know what you want. Part of why agile doesn't work is because customers want agile, but they don't know what that means for them in their position. So if it is certain metrics or certain deliverables, or you're expecting certain inputs, you've got to incorporate those things into your process to make sure that we can actually give you that. And that way we can adjust the process the way we need to and make sure that we bed down on the things that the customer sees are important. That way we're not going to run around in circles.
Well, and that's the whole point as well. Tayla Boni, thank you, Senior Solutionist at Synthesis Software Technologies, talking to us about faking it, fake agile. Is your company guilty of that? I'm Howard Feldman. This is Synthesis TV.